Hello everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. Now let's start with today's topic. In today's episode, I will do it a little differently than the previous episodes. You can consider it as a special episode, as an opportunity for you and me to sit together and mix one, then we go out and chat. We sit and confide in each other. In that spirit, I also prepare a few ideas for the content that I have already thought in my head, and I will record the rest. Impromptu means that whatever I think about, I will say it in the spirit of a tea drinking session as a small memory between me and my brothers and sisters on these special days. If you have a chance to look back later, maybe the memories you tell each other include a small memory where you and I had such an intimate tea drinking session. Today, I have prepared for you some content that I think will be more or less helpful to you during this time, as I have shared with you a few times in the past. Last episode, my main job was largely about customer experience. Therefore, I have to regularly research aspects of psychology, and in today's episode 1 will share with you some stories that I have collected during my research. I often tell my friends that what we are facing is like a world war, so we will probably only see it once in our lives and probably no one wants to see it again. Once again, the only difference is that in this war, all of us humans are on the same side, on the other side is an invisible enemy. Speaking of war, it reminds me of a story about an Austrian Jewish doctor during World War II. Because he was of Jewish origin, the Nazis sent him to many concentration camps. Among them are famous camps such as Dachau or Auschwitz. After the war, he was one of the rare people lucky enough to survive, and he became a psychologist, from which he had the opportunity to use his own experiences to do psychological analysis. Through movies and newspapers, you probably already know more or less about what the Nazi concentration camps were like. In there, people are stripped of all the most basic things, not only in terms of material conditions but also in terms of human honor and dignity. People living there are often hungry, cold and sick, they have to do hard labor every day, and they themselves can be tortured at any time for random reasons. The worst thing is that these concentration camps were established for the main purpose of executing Jews. So the death of the people living in them was almost certain. Living conditions where everything physically, mentally and spiritually are pushed down to such extreme levels, and death is almost certain, and it comes at any time. Can you imagine if we are in such a terrible living condition, how will we think and act? As for me, when I found out about these things, I kept wondering how they could continue to live, what kept them from committing suicide. At first I thought maybe the answer was based on the basic human instinct, which is the greed for life. Then I thought that no matter how greedy I am for life, if I keep living I will continue to experience it. After days of such torture, the end will come and you will die anyway. Is that survival instinct enough to keep them going through such days? Only then will we find the answer. Well, it's exactly as I thought. It's much deeper than the life instinct, because if we only rely on the life instinct, it's not enough to keep people continuing to live in this situation. Such a scene, and the deeper reason is the word why. Today I will use a lot of these words. Maybe this word why is the reason for us to continue living, or in Vietnamese it has another word that is also very good. Is the reason for living. Are the meanings of life we still learn. I also find this word why very important. If we have it, it will help us overcome any difficult situations that exist. On the contrary, without it, it will lead us to despair and negativity, and we will even resort to actions that are harmful to ourselves, in the matter that the doctor said. Franco told me that in the concentration camp at that time, according to his observations, it was divided into a number of groups like that. The first group is considered the Kapo group. This group is also a Jewish prisoner, but they choose to be a lackey for the Nazis to manage other prisoners, in the vast majority of cases. These Kapo people are sometimes even more evil than the Nazis that were the first group. The second group is a group of people who have almost given up, and we can partly understand why, because life is so crazy that they no longer have any faith. Or what is the motivation to continue to strive and try? Not to mention that at that time all their families had already been killed, and they accepted that they had given up and left to face the fate that would follow. In fact, after they showed such a careless attitude, in the vast majority of cases they were immediately executed by the Nazi soldiers. But even if they weren't executed, those people began to slowly sink into illness and eventually died. And the third group are those who, in such terrible days, somehow found a motivation for their lives, and this group is the group with the highest probability of surviving after war. Dr. Franco's case is one such case. He is a doctor and has determined that his goal is that as long as he is alive, He will use his expertise to care for and treat the inmates he sees as an ideal for his life, a mission for him to pursue, and that goal was so big that one time he refused an opportunity to escape just because he could not accept the thought of giving up. Falls his patience. Through that example, we can clearly see that once you have a goal, it will be a very big motivation, strong enough to the point that you are willing to die for that goal. So it's obvious that the problem, the living conditions at that time, were no longer strong enough to knock him down anymore, and through that we also see that when we find our why, there is no problem, any difficulty that we cannot overcome. From the opposite perspective, when there is no word why, we will immediately be filled with negative thoughts, and unfortunately this is quite common in our modern society. Surely many times we have asked ourselves, what is the reason for this life? What is the meaning of all the things we are doing, as I once analyzed some previous episodes. The reason is special in today's life, when our lives revolve around going to work in the morning and going home in the afternoon, and because life keeps repeating itself. Boringly, then at the end of the month when people receive their salary, they use that salary to go shopping for things and use it as a way to bring some short-term joy. Then I often tell my friends that this job is not much different from what we do when we work as a porter to have money to buy drugs. We do something we don't like in exchange for money, then use it. That money is to buy short-term joys, and if this continues, there will come a time when we will be startled and ask why it all has to be like that. Why are we born and then caught up in that cycle, day after day, and then in the end when time expires and we leave, there will be times when we wonder if life is just like that. Okay, and the root cause of this situation is that we have lost the word why, that is, we cannot find the reason why we exist in this world. When we look back at the previous generation of our ancestors, even though they were born during the war with much poorer living conditions than today, they had something that we have today. We have to search to find that big word why. When the young people of that time grew up, because the times were like that, they would almost immediately be given a very clear and specific why, the meaning of their lives at that time. Defending and standing up to defend the country, what they believe is right. It is a huge motivation to help them overcome countless difficulties in living conditions at that time, even to the extent that they are willing to do so. Willing to risk even his life. In today's life, not only in our country but also in countries around the world, they grow up with much better living conditions than previous generations. But you are missing a very important thing, which is the word why. For some of you who work hard to find it, you will find that thanks to the economic conditions and the rapid development of society, you will have a lot of motivation to develop and be very successful, but that is a small number. As for the rest, most of you don't realize this, so you keep moving forward without knowing what your why is, and those questions are often ignored. Hovering above your heads, why are these things ultimately for? Why is life such a repetitive series, and if you stay in such a state you will never be able to find it? My why. Then gradually it makes everything you do meaningless, and then it will gradually drag you down the wrong path. That is using material values as a temporary sedative to help you have short-term joy and ignore that emptiness that grows more and more, and if it continues, if you keep going like that, slowly in your unconscious mind, it will gradually lead you into more toxic questions like why try to live such a life? Why continue and no further than the above? The podcast also had some of you send me questions like that. And this is not from guesses from scratch, but from research from psychology. In psychology, people call this situation. Imagine that our minds are like bottles of water. When we pour out 50% of the water, 50% of the air immediately disappears. Will flood in to take its place. Then when we pour out all the water, it means that 100% of the air will flood in to take its place in the bottle. Likewise, when we begin to lose motivation to live, our minds will immediately begin to be replaced by negative thoughts. The most severe cases of these negative thoughts are finding death. Therefore, you see that it is normal that not finding the meaning of life is already dangerous, but it will be much more dangerous in difficult times. During the recent epidemic period, many of us had to fall into even more difficult situations than usual. Businesses suffered losses and workers became unemployed, while every day when you wake up, you have to constantly face a series of life pressures of these stages. Such difficulties will be like the wind that blows up the fires that have been smoldering for a long time. If it's mild, it will push you into depression. If it's severe, it can push you to negative actions. In such cases, the best way is for us to find goals to pursue and from there, gradually rediscover the meaning of life for ourselves. Like in the case of Dr. Franco's opinion is that he chose his mission at that time to care for and treat other inmates, which would be the best way to find joy and motivation in their lives. I remember one time I watched a program on YouTube about the unfortunate lives in Vietnam. There are cases that are so heartbreaking that I cannot imagine how people can suffer so much. From those images, I returned to these studies, and there was a time when I had some doubts and I asked questions. It's easy for us to sit here and say it because the vast majority of us have never heard of it. Now have to go through such extreme hardships. But does it have to have a certain limit? Once suffering has surpassed those limits, no matter how strong or optimistic the spirit is, everyone will eventually give up. Asking such questions, and fortunately, through Dr. Franco's stories, he helps us have very convincing answers. That is, once we have found the answer why for ourselves and the meaning of life, we can overcome any situation no matter how difficult it is. He recounted that in the camp, there were people who went every night to comfort the people around them, giving them their last pieces of bread, and those people were the evidence is very clear to show us that we can have anything in life taken away from us, from property to freedom, even to human honor and dignity. But there will always be one thing that no one can take away from us: our right to choose when faced with a certain situation. We can choose to become Nazi lackeys, we can choose to surrender to our fate, or we can choose to find our own reasons to continue. Keep moving forward. That choice is ours and will always belong to us. No one can take it away. If the hells on earth and concentration camps cannot take away that choice, then no situation can take it away from us. There is another story that is also very good. There was a time when a man went to see a psychologist. He had just lost his life partner, and he felt that he had lost all meaning in life and had no choice to live anymore. After talking for a while, the doctor asked the man what he thought it would be like if he were the one who died first and his wife was the one who survived. That would be terrible for her, and she would certainly be very sad, the doctor told the man. He saw that the fact that she passed away before him helped her avoid suffering, and it was he who bore these sufferings on her behalf. When the man heard that, he became silent and began to calm down. After a while, he stood up, shook the doctor's hand, and he left. In that case, it was a doctor. He knew he couldn't bring that man's wife back. What he could do was help that man change his perspective on life. Through this example, we can see the importance of perspective, and especially the word why when we have found the meaning of something. When you move the painful and difficult feelings, it will be greatly reduced, just like that man. When he finds a reasonable meaning for the incident, his pain will automatically be resolved. There is a Prussian philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche who has a saying that I really like. He who has a why to live can bear almost any way. I had the opportunity to read some macroeconomic research written about the recent pandemic. I think that epidemic will still have many difficulties ahead even after the epidemic has passed for a long time. Next are the aftershocks that affect the economy not only in our country but also globally, so it will certainly create many difficulties in the coming time. Many people lose their jobs when companies cut costs. There will be businesses with losses that fall into very difficult situations, but hopefully in such difficult situations, you will try your best. Try to find reasons for yourself to continue striving, starting with taking a more positive perspective instead of looking at all the difficulties of this period of separation and even the difficulties in the future. What is coming next is like a form of difficulty piling up on top of difficulty. Instead, we look at difficulties and failures as an opportunity for us to find the meaning of our lives. Because everything is normal, sometimes we will always be dragged along by inertia. Sometimes losing a job, for example, will be an opportunity for you to choose a new job again. More favored means more. Sometimes the most difficult situations are opportunities for us to shock everything and find our why. In the framework of a short podcast episode, I cannot share it all with you all. How to set goals and find meaning in life. But the simplest way is that you can start with small goals to make it fun, or read a book, or start learning a new language, or learn a new language. Something new. Surely that will help those days and make your spirit and thoughts become more positive. Even if you want, you can leave this goal in the comments section below as a way to promise yourself that after a short period of time we can start. Set further goals, and gradually those things will bring you to your why, and once you have found the why, it will make your life much more meaningful. It's a lot later. I have found my why, and I can confirm with you that it is a great source of motivation to help us strive in every situation, no matter how difficult it is. Furthermore, I hope that through what I shared today, it will help you better understand the importance of finding the meaning of life as well as how to use it to overcome it. Difficult times that we all will have to go through at some point in our lives. Surely in the future there will be many difficulties ahead, so it will help you find your whys more easily, because that is very important, as Mark Twain once said. The most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you found out why. I hope you will soon find the word why for yourself. If you find this content useful, please share it with your friends and relatives. In addition, YouTube's algorithm prioritizes videos with many likes, so if you like this video, please click on the like button to help more people know about our podcast. Thank you for watching, and I wish you a happy day with your loved ones and family.